we are going. Many thanks for joining us right here on Opposing Views. My name is Kwabna Chenchehene Boateng, and we are glad you've made time for us today in your homes, in your offices, whether you're having lunch or whatever it is. We are glad because this is a very interesting conversation. This is a conversation that concerns all of us, myself, you, and everybody, particularly for the many who are keen on affirmative action, the women. Yes, they deserve a lot, but do they get as much support as they should get? The president has promised a lot of things. Has he even delivered on the several things he said he was going to do for the women? Some say he has. A lot more say, well, there are still a few things he could do to help some more. There have been other leaders who have promised other things. Some have, others may not have delivered. But like I said, today the conversation is about affirmative action. It's about women in politics. Why so few? That is the question on the table. I again say I'm very, very pleased that today we are speaking to a woman, a panel filled with women, all very, very powerful women. Let me start by introducing them to you right about now. To my immediate right is Gifty Kekeli Klenam. I'm sure a lot of you know her. She was very, very popular. She still is, though. She's a former member of parliament for Lower West Akim. She's one of our guests today on the show. Madam, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Great. We also do have Fawzia Tua Al-Hassan. She is with the Media Foundation for West Africa. She's also an advocate. She's been very, very keen on issues relating to gender and pushing females to the level they are supposed to be. Fawzia, thank you for agreeing to do this also. Also joining us via Zoom, we have two very, very key people. One is Dr. Sylvia Barr. She's an associate professor of sociology with the York University. Doc, if you can hear me and see me, thank you for agreeing to join us this afternoon. And then also we would have Hajia Sajida Shiraz. She will also be joining us via Zoom. So those two conversations on Zoom will be starting off in a bit. But let me start with my guest in studio now. I'll start with Honorable Gifty Klenam. I mean, before we even start all of this, you've been missing in action for a while. Why? You've been very quiet.
It's all part of the politics.
Really? Wow. So you just decided you're not going to talk again? You weren't going to do anything?
We're talking, but in a different way.
Okay. So you're still involved in the politics of the day?
Yes.
Campaigning for the NPP? Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo?
Exactly.
Really?
That's a better choice for Ghana.
Okay. So, I think perhaps maybe I should start off with you by asking this question. Whether or not you think there's... Okay, let's start off with this. Your decision to join politics. What was the motivation for you to begin to do politics? And then we can look at the struggles of doing politics. Because you have been in it for a while now. You have experienced all of these things. So let's start off with why you decided to get involved.
Well, I'm a typical private sector person, but there's so much that the private sector need. So my decision for joining politics is to see how we can spearhead the private sector movement, agenda for the private sector.
Was it an easy decision to make?
It's a call to be there for others. You know, all of us cannot move into it, so I feel strongly that I should hang in there to pursue the agenda for the private sector, because I strongly believe that private sector is the only way that can drive the nation.
Okay. So, very interesting thoughts there. I'll be coming to the challenges you have faced following your decision to actually go into politics, mainline. But let me come to Fawzia. Fawzia, in your line of work, I'm sure you do encounter a lot of women, perhaps in media. What is the view you get from them when you engage them as to how easy or difficult the status quo is for them? And I'm using media because it's a rather lax system, so you would expect that a lot more women would be in the front line of it, but we still don't see so much of women. So in your engagement with them, what do you see? What do you garner?
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon to your viewers out there. I think one thing that continues to run through all women engagement and activities is the fact that equal opportunities are still missing for women when it comes to issues of development, and that includes the media space. So you have a lot of women still not having the power to be in editorial positions, to make really influential decisions, or decisions that will change the narrative about women. So you still find stories about child abuse or even women abuse or issues of rape, and you still find the reports a bit unfriendly, and you notice that if a woman was behind this story, perhaps the story would have been different, the narrative would have changed. So I think that we still need to have more women in position of power, whether at the media space, mainstream media development organizations, whether our local assemblies, our parliamentary candidatures. We need a lot of women in those powerful spaces to be able to contribute effectively to some of these decisions we need to make.
What are the challenges, I mean, in your engagement with these people, what are some of the challenges they pinpoint?
Well, one has to do with the fact that, which is not really particular to women only.
Okay.
Of course, the issue of media sustainability, media ownership, it still comes to play when it comes to women development in media. So you find a lot of them complaining about of course, the remuneration that comes to play and how it affects their work as women who have families to raise, but also need to deal with their professional or career life. So you have some women complain bitterly about issues of harassment, which I mentioned earlier. Of course, unequal pay also plays a critical role or affects women's activities in the media. And for some women too, of course, when it comes to women being involved in or empowering themselves, it also has to do with the woman herself being able to confidently avail herself to vie for positions, or also to present themselves as best fits for a particular position. So it's one thing dealing with the structures that suppress women. It's another thing when the women themselves do not really own up to some of these positions. So it's both sides. You have, we need to deal with both
So
structures.
I see Gifty nodding. I think she seems to agree with a lot of the things you're saying, and I'm sure it may apply to her in her political life. Is that the case? But again, I must say that when I reached out to, when the production team reached out to you, you didn't hesitate, both of you, and I'm really glad you decided to join in the panel. But with that said now, with you nodding, is that to suggest you agree with almost all the things she's saying?
Yes, to some extent.
To an extent?
Yes.
Okay, to what extent?
The structures are there, but being able to communicate. Let me start by saying that we have about 51% of the population as women.
Yeah.
Okay, so if women want power and women want to be represented, we have Ministry of Gender, Children,
And social protection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's one beautiful thing Oyelita did by adding up to the name and clearly defining it. So this definition, you need women to represent.
Yeah.
As it is, these women, are we able to communicate to the 51% of the women we have in the country that we need them to make certain women be sustained in the game of politics? The education has been the only issue we have as women. Strongly, we are not able to communicate to the grassroots women who make politicians powerful. Because when you come into the political parties, it is the women who make the political parties powerful. And yet, the direction which they take their influence and their support to, when it comes to the women issue, is like choice of words, is wrong. Because we are looking at how the women themselves can support women to sustain us in the game of politics.
So in other words, you are your own enemies.
Not necessarily. I wouldn't want to use the word our own enemies. We have not been able to communicate. You have the power. You, the voter, you have the power to put me there. You are asking me, what do you need the power for? I should be able to tell you, convince you, that when you put me there, I will make sure that I am bringing early childhood development centers at the remote areas where you are, where it is not accessible. I should be able to tell you that there are about several stages of human development in society. Every human being is born by a woman. The process of going through 9-month childbirth is a concern to women. We should be able to communicate to the women.
So you see the primary problem as lack of communication.
Exactly.
As in women not being able to communicate to the populace
Yes.
that we are the best candidates
to represent you,
to represent your interests.
because we understand your issues properly. The person have the mandate to make you powerful. What are you telling him?
Then that's also a failure on your part. You're a politician.
Yes.
You failed all of these years.
Yes.
You represented
so 20
your
years down the
constituents
line.
for 8 years.
No, it's not individual. We are
I get
trying
it. I
to,
get it. Yes.
So 20 years. In any case, my constituency, almost everybody who has been MP there, they've done it once. I'm the only one who did it twice.
I know.
So I haven't failed. But what is more important now is you have set up Ministry of Women and Children, Gender and Social Protection since 2000 under President Kufuor's government. This should tell us women that the men are interested in we coming on board. Do you understand? So when it comes to the political front, they've played their role. So it is up to us as women to live up to the challenge.
Okay. Very interesting points. You disagree with it to an extent?
I mean, just to add that a lot of these things that you find men or public institutions putting in place are just for tokenism purposes. So like we have women in power, or we have, say we need women in
Not to
office.
cut you, but let me quickly introduce Dr. Sylvia Barr, who's an associate professor of sociology with the York University, who's joining us via Zoom. Also, Hajia Sajida Shiraz is the founder of Women's Action Network for Change. Ladies, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Okay, great.
Thank you for inviting us.
Great. We are so grateful for your time. So, Fozia, please make the point.
Yes, just to add that a lot of these structures that we find our government agencies or institutions saying they have put in structures to support women sometimes are just tokenism.
Tokenism, you see?
It's just to represent or to say that we have women. But how involved are these women when it comes to decision making?
But based on what she's saying, it at least is a step.
Yes, it's a step.
Right?
But now we have, between 2000 and 2020, that's 20 years. From now to now, we should still not be having women being quiet or silenced when it comes to conversations about development. We should have equal representation. Just look at our parliament currently. Just 12.75%, 275 MPs, and only 36, 37 people are there as women. This is, and when you talk, you find our politicians come out to say that we have this number of women from compared to 5 years or 6 years ago, or compared to NDC government, and it's just because they want us to see that there are women there. But how involved are these women? What are the conducive spaces we are creating for these women to be part of the
We'll have a lengthier
processes?
conversation on this in a bit, because I know the president said something somewhere and it created a whole lot of noise. He suggested that perhaps the ladies are not availing themselves well enough. They may not be ready for certain things. But we'll get to that in a bit. Let me come to Dr. Sylvia Barr. She's written a paper on this. It's a very interesting paper. I had the privilege to read a bit of it. But I'll just ask you now, Dr. Barr, what do you see to be, I mean, empirically speaking, you have done the research, but what do you gather to be the reason for why we do not have so many women in elitist positions, particularly in politics, in the governance process?
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to start by going back to something you said earlier about the fact that women are the ones that are most concerned with the affirmative action bill and situation in the country, and that is true. But I think that it's important that this is should be concerned with and about, because you cannot exclude more than half of your population in what you're considering state. That's a shame by any measure. And every person should be concerned, because that means that we are actually really excluding very crucial and critical voices that could contribute tremendously to the transformation of our country, to the transformation of our economy as it is right now. So I just wanted to throw it out there that this is our problem, and that this is something that I think a lot of us are concerned about. But now to your question, in addition to some of the things that my colleagues in the studio have mentioned, there is the problem of women pushing against historical systemic barriers, right? I mean, the former MP indicated that it might be a problem with communication, but I kind of disagree to an extent. It isn't so much that people aren't able to communicate, or potential politicians aren't able to communicate to women. We are pushing against socialization, which indicates to us, especially in our context, that women aren't naturally suited to public life, right? And so the few women who do come up face tremendous challenges that their male counterparts don't have to deal with. So that's one. So we're talking about these kinds of systemic barriers. And I'm sure the former MP will indicate herself that on the campaign trail, there's name calling, in addition to the fact that it's difficult to even make it into like the primary process of any of the major political parties. There's also the issue of funding or with funding. And in many instances, you have women who still have to juggle domestic responsibilities and duties with trying to run a campaign. And again, you get the pushback, like you get significant pushback from the society. So there is that problem. And that problem, I have to also mention that it is not necessarily, it's important for us to always take context into consideration when we are discussing this. So within the Ghanaian context, this is a huge problem. And yet it's a huge problem currently. It's not really a problem that if we had continued with some of the policies that Nkrumah implemented, if we had been a bit more consistent in terms of pushing those doors open, in being deliberate with inviting, including, supporting, providing that kind of structural support for women, we would have been somewhere better than we are today, because we've seen countries that have done that deliberately. If you take Rwanda, Rwanda ranks #1 in terms of women representation in the world, not just in Africa, right? And that didn't just come about because, women were just necessarily that much better at communicating. It is because it was a deliberate invitation into that political process. And I think this is one of the reasons why we are concerned with affirmative action, because affirmative action opens the doors that have been historically shut in the face of marginalized groups. So I think if that gets to your question, there are other countries, and it's also important again to mention that this isn't a problem only for Ghana or the African continent for that matter. It is a problem world where women are still struggling to break these barriers into the political realm. But I'm saying that just because it's a problem for the rest of the world doesn't mean that we couldn't emulate successful examples like Rwanda, South Africa, have done this very deliberately.
I'll be coming to you to get some answers as to what you think perhaps could be done right. I know a lot of interventions have been put in by a lot of governments, particularly this president, in trying to narrow the gap. But since you made mention of historical antecedents and all, I remember reading another paper, not yours though, but similar to that, which raised serious issues as to historical facts, particularly the British colony, how the British managed to, in a way, through their setup, downplay on the relevance of some of these women and play up the men, for reasons for which we have income inequality gap in some of these areas and all. So I think I understand clearly where you're coming from and what you're saying. But at this point, though, let me also take the views of Hajia Sajda Shiraz. Hajia, you've heard your colleague women speak on this issue. From where you sit, what do you see to be the problem?
Okay, just to follow up on you talking about historical antecedents, if you permit me, I would like to situate this within the historical context.
Okay, great.
So if we are asking the question, why are there few women in politics? To be able to answer that objectively, we need to take a look back at history. So if you look at the pre-colonial times, unlike males who were allowed the opportunity to tap into the educational system, the benefits of the educational system, women were limited in their ability to access these avenues. And when they eventually were allowed to, those courses that they were allowed to take were very gendered in nature. So that led to a situation where you had what they, in quotes, refer to as the public domain, regarded solely as a preserve of men who have been trained to succeed in that arena, and then the privates where you have women, and then the increasingly stereotypical notion that women perhaps belong at home because they haven't been trained for other spheres. So this has had look-back effects. When you look at politics now, for you to succeed in politics, you need money. Without a strong educational background, the possibility for you to have a sound financial anchoring is quite limited. So the historical trend of limiting women's access to schools or education has had look-back effects on their ability to participate effectively in politics now. So one may argue that this trend has changed because now you see women are in schools. We have Dr. Sylvia here, evidence of the fact that women can access the highest educational or can rise up to the highest educational ranks. So the question persists, why then do we still have these persistent problems? If we are saying educational, the limited access to education was an issue, we do not, or at least to, even if we do, it's more marginal as compared to how it is. So why then do the numbers not reflect the increased access to education? And then I think that when we discuss these factors, they feed into each other. So for instance, I had as my number one answer to the question, why are there few women in politics? The fact that we have a lack of critical access and an absence of a critical mass of people to promote women's issues at the very top. So by this, let's ask what's a critical mass. When we are talking about a critical mass, we are looking at a substantive number of women who, as an influential body, can effect or can propel meaningful political change. So when we say we have an absence of a critical mass, we are looking at the numbers. We, for instance, have 37.
Okay. I think internet has dropped there. We have a bit of an internet challenge there, but that will be dealt with in a bit. But so what I gather from what everyone is saying suggests that perhaps we need to do a lot more. However, again, like I mentioned, the president has done a lot of things. For instance, he got the first female chief of staff. He's done quite a lot in there. But he passed a comment somewhere and he created a lot of, again, I would say, noise. Let's take a listen to President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo in that session and what it is he said and the reactions that came subsequent to those comments he made there. And then I can have my womanel today, as I choose to call it. I'll have my womanel react to that and then we can find answers to that teething problem of why so few. We need a lot more in there.
President of Ghana is listening very closely. Nana Akufo-Addo. He's thinking, why is she wearing kente cloth to talk to us about what we should do? You're listening closely. What is your response to Natasha? That she...
Well, let me say, first of all, how very privileged I feel to be here to discuss the issue.
Okay, just with the microphone. Yeah.
Ghana, the majority of the population is not coming,
It's on the other side.
is not coming through.
Yeah, it's okay.
Is it better?
Yes.
Okay.
I fixed it for you.
Thank you. The majority of the people in Ghana are women.
Yes.
52% of our population is women. So if we have to have an ordered society, to have a fair society, those statistics should count. they should be decisive in what is done. And they're going to be decisive when politicians like Natasha. Oh, she's a politician. She is a politician. I think that President Kenyatta would agree with me, and so would Justice Trudeau. She is a politician. When they are able to be where the decisions are made. Because at the end of the day, communities or groups talking for themselves and being representative does not translate into power. The most important thing is power, that you sit around the table whereby the decisions that you make are enforced and become the norms and regulations by which the society lives. So I think that is the, for me, what I've seen in the 2.5 years that I've been in office, that not enough movement is being made by the 52% of the Ghanaian population that are women to be able to be in the position to make these decisions. The cabinet that I have, some 30-odd% of them are women.
30%.
30%. It's not good enough.
So next,
It doesn't
20%
reflect-
more next year.
Well,
Yes.
and as if they re-elect me, we'll see. But
If you
that
campaign
push-
on that, they might.
is that push that is key. And we are not, this may sound for the ears of people like Ella very reactionary. We're not seeing enough dynamism and activism on the part of those who are seeking this new. We're not. We're not. No, yeah, we're not. I'm talking about dynamism where it matters.
When was the last time you saw a dynamic head of state?
I'm saying those dynamic is not sitting around here talking. I'm talking about electing people to parliament, controlling political parties, because they're the instruments by which our societies make decisions.
Interesting, and I'm sure you now recall the issue of dynamism and how it got everyone talking. Let me come to you, Fozia. Is it really the case that there isn't a lot of dynamism on the part of women, particularly in the country? And again, by asking this, I'm not saying this to suggest that. Okay, let me just hear you respond to this first. Anyway, yeah.
Yes. So listening to the president again, I felt it took me back to the reaction and the.
But is he wrong?
I think that partly a lot of the things he said is because of the political leaders' own failure or inability to have more women who are into activism occupy these positions.
But if the people are not availing themselves, like Nifty Klenam said, if they are not availing themselves, how do you get them there?
So
the opportunity the platform has been created, the opportunity has been given.
Yes, so that's what I was telling you earlier on,
About
that the
tokenism.
issue of tokenism. So we have created a platform. Women and men can come out and say we want to be parliamentary candidates. But then you come out as a woman, there are a lot of structures that affect your ability to compete competitively. So you look at the issue of resources, which Dr. Sylvia mentioned, or is it Sajida? You look at the issue of cultural practices that still hinder the woman's ability to come out boldly and stand for said positions. You still need your husband's approval. You still need to deal with a lot of the provocative remarks and insults and indecent expressions that the society...
But with all the examples you are giving,
Yes.
men face similar challenges.
Yes, but a man doesn't need her wife's approval to come
Why
out
not?
for... He can veto it, unlike the woman.
Okay, so
so
then you bring back the conversation of the society.
Yes, it's a cultural thing, and we need policies and strategies that address some of these structures. Say that I'm sure Honorable here will relate very well to what I'm saying. We need
She's going to tell us a lot more.
Yes,
about
so
her
we
personal
need those
experience in this
structures.
field anyway.
So the president saying that there's not enough dynamism and activism. I think that we do not have these people who are dynamic and activist enough occupying these relevant positions that we say we've given women and men equal opportunities to occupy. So we have...
So you are saying, even with interventions such as, say, for ladies who want to contest in, say, the NPP, paying half of the filing fees, being given extra motivation in other spheres is still not enough?
It's still not enough. Let me just give you an example. Let's take the affirmative action. How many years has there been activism by women groups and some men groups to get the government, the previous government, the current government to pass the affirmative action bill into law? What is more influential than to have a policy that backs women empowerment? But that one thing, to pass the bill into law, is still not done after several years of activism.
Gifty Klenam, you were in Parliament, and I know this affects you. It affected you then, it still affects you now. Why did you not get the bill passed? Why did you not help us get that affirmative action bill?
Okay, before I answer that one, I think that what the president said, he was just trying to humbly throw a challenge to women. So it's up to all of us to live up to the challenge. And then for me, if there is any other political party that will want to look into the affairs of women in terms of putting structures in place to support women to come up, the president party,
which is the NPP,
is leading. The affirmative action.
The contrary argument there would be that another candidate has chosen a running mate who is a woman.
Well, the president has chosen the chief of staff who is a woman.
Which gives people more opportunity.
Yeah,
a chief of staff or a vice president.
You think so?
No, I'm asking. I don't know. I'm
well,
just
that's
asking.
another argument. But let's wait and see how
anyway.
the role of a chief of staff and whatever.
Okay.
And so the affirmative action, I think that is gone through process. Okay, it's gone through process. And for me, you see, it's all come back to us as women. Until the affirmative action is passed.
What can you do?
What can we do? All of us want to have a larger number at various places. It's a no-go area. We want it. But until it is passed, we are not saying that the power we want, it belongs to somebody. Somebody is holding it. We have to adopt a strategy to be able to take it from them. So if you are doing the same thing, the same strategy every day and we are not getting the result, why don't we change it? I still come back to the issue of President just corrected me by saying that it's 52%. So if we have women, 52% of the population as women, and we cannot get them to give us the power we want as women among ourselves, how do you expect the men to give us the power?
Okay, so I want to ask you this direct question. Yes, you did break a record in your constituency. You were the one candidate who managed to win 2 elections. Some way, somehow, you lost out in your party's primaries, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, some say, instead of the president just talking, walk it. So walk the talk, right? Put your money where your mouth is. There have been instances where candidates have been protected. You, for instance, would it have been so wrong for the party and, say, the president to have suggested that, you know what, let's protect Gifty Klenam because she's doing such a good job and she's managed to push and be dynamic enough and actually even gone beyond what many expected and she has maintained the seat for us. Would it have been wrong? Some say, and then it comes back to the issue of tokenism because there are 1 or 2 seats of some women are protected and then the rest goes back to the men.
Okay.
Oh?
So I am saying that it is a process.
Okay.
It wouldn't have been wrong at all. But as we speak, it was not done. In moving forward, if I tell you the processes that the president, by then he was a candidate, went through to protect some of us. So he, as a president, his greatest wish is more like we should even have 50% of women in parliament.
He promised between 30 and 40% of his appointees will be women.
True.
Is that the case?
It is true.
That
is what he wished for. But like the other panelists have said, hold on. Yes, the other panelists have said that there are systems
No, but the Constitution gives the president all the right to choose anyone he wants to do anything. So it's not about the system, is it?
The Constitution doesn't give the president the right to choose parliamentarians.
No.
Who go and make the law on behalf of women. I am saying, where we sit, we want power. We want to strengthen the women power in this country. We want results.
And the women can deliver the results?
No, we've been talking about the problems. Can we find a way to go outside it and see if we can start getting the results?
We are beginning to have that conversation. That's why, for instance, we are talking about the one person with the authority to implement such change in such proportions. And he promising certain things while in opposition, and he, well, delivering to a point, but still leaving a huge gap.
That's what I'm saying, that it's a process. We will get there. Even if he's not able.
In how many years? 200 years time? 100 years?
Whatever it is. It's taking us, we have women and women ministry. All I'm telling the advocates is that they should get the women ministry to work. Get the women ministry to work, to represent women the way we want the ministry to be represented. She is a cabinet ministerial appointment. Push your way through there and let them give us the results we women want.
Okay, I'll be taking some more thoughts from you, and Hajia's Sajida is with us also. She's rejoined us via Zoom. Sajida, you were making a point earlier. Maybe you could wrap that up quickly and then give us your thoughts on the president's take on the dynamism of certain women and the justification given by Gifty Klenam, suggesting that, yes, indeed, the president is doing a lot to push women.
Hi, thank you again, and I'm glad to be back.
Great.
So I think on the historical antecedents, it's safe to leave that for now and discuss the president's dynamism comment. I don't think it does justice to the phenomenal work the women's movement in Ghana has done over the years.
Okay.
If you look at even the fight for independence, we had women at the forefront of it. We had market women, ordinary market women, and mobilizing, getting together funds and supporting the independence movement. So if you go back to the political history, it was in recognition of this phenomenal support that at least 10 of them were appointed onto the General Assembly. So that is a case to be made for affirmative action. Unless it was, at the point, it could be argued that it was perhaps tokenistic, but it was substantive enough, and it was at least a start for something we hoped could be better. So then we have, in this country, we have had the Sisters Keepers who mobilized when there were issues of serial killings in the country. They mobilized, they protested, and then brought attention to these issues. Even the Domestic Violence Act is a direct result of the dynamism and the activism of the women's movement. So to insinuate somehow that women in Ghana are not dynamic enough is not doing justice to the efforts that have characterized the quest to have increased participation, the increased participation of women in politics. I have done research on even the affirmative action law and the quest to codify it. And then if you look at it, you see that even the draft zero was drafted by people within the women's movement. And they have continuously pushed. And this feeds back into my conversation about critical access and critical masses. You see that today in Ghana, those who push for the passage of the affirmative action bill belong more to civil society and the women's movement than they belong to those within parliament. Apologies to Honorable Gifty there, but I think there is more that can be done. But then
she agrees there's more to be done, and she's suggesting that the president is doing a lot. You see, it's one thing if you have a leader who is dismissive of your efforts, and if I gather correctly, there's a president who is keen on pushing women. So essentially, he's opened the way, is holding the door, and is giving you the opportunity to now begin to also step up your efforts, and perhaps, who knows? Now maybe I can hear Dr. Sylvia Bauer. Yes, you are itching to comment on this. Yes,
if I could, yes. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't. If you say he's holding the door, I'm going to be very curious about what you mean by he's holding the door. Because I think if he was holding the door, we wouldn't still be talking about the affirmative action bill at the moment. And as someone who was an AU gender champion.
Yeah.
And I think, even the responses from his fellow panelists at that event told a lot about the fact that I think that even he now, I'm sure, regrets the statements that he made, because clearly one of the things he mentioned was that women need, that it's about power. And I agree completely on that point. But the thing he's forgetting is that it's also about power to marginalize, to suppress, to exclude. And I think that this has been the problem. The problem hasn't been that women are not struggling to take power. As my colleague Hajia has just said, from independence up until now, women have been pushing. We're post-independence all over this continent. So now the question is, what are those people that have the power? It could just be a stroke of a pen, right? What are you doing with that power? And it's not as if even despite all of those things, we aren't still pushing. We are. And the problem with that was trying to, I think one of the things that he tried to do was to make it, make an exceptionalist case for Africa or Ghana for that matter. And again, that is not the problem. I'm saying, and I indicated earlier, and because we just don't have enough time to delve into all of the nitty-gritties, it is always about political will. And my colleague just talked about, critical masses. And even in terms of the way we change our language, for instance, I'm hoping that the next time even you talk about this as a we problem, because it is a we problem. And it is when we don't see it as a we problem. And I'm glad that the former MP there said she got into politics because she was interested in pushing issues of the private sector. She didn't say she got into politics for women, right? And I think that that's very important for us to know that this isn't something that is just for women. It is about representing other voices that have been historically excluded. And the point is that if we want to make progress in this country, we are not going anywhere fast if we continue to marginalize other voices in the country.
And can I just add
quickly? Yeah.
I think that in a functioning democracy, participation in of itself is a right. It shouldn't have to take the dynamism of women for doors to be open for us. I haven't seen any dynamism.
Again, it will come to the point of how many women are even interested in taking up these opportunities. That has been the critical question. But we'll be taking that very answer from all the panelists in a bit. And also, we went out to speak to a few people as to why perhaps they are not also keen on voting for women when given the opportunity, because there are a lot of women who sometimes do offer themselves but do not get the opportunity because people tend not to vote for them. They do not understand why they should vote for women. And you think that's a problem caused by the women.
To let them know.
Okay. We'll be dealing with all of these issues in a bit, but you're still watching Opposing Views right here on MX24. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us.
They'll go with the 4-4-2 diamond formation for that early lead.
An early goal will settle the nerves.
Their away team has been in bad form. They will feel the pressure.
The home side's kept 2 clean sheets in a row.
It's all about momentum.
Who will have the stamina to last the 90 minutes?
Their star striker is suspended.
They've got no kappa.
The marking will be tight.
This will be won or lost in the midfield.
This is why I bet.
This is why I bet.
This is why I bet. Betway, for the love of the game.
Good.
They say it's the little things that count. The things we shouldn't take for granted. Like being able to have a warm shower. Oh, how about some tea, my dear? And cooking with ease. How about being able to invite friends over so confidently? Sharing the food, just chilling over a few drinks, watching movies. It's just, what's the word? Comfortable. I could go on and on and on and on, but we both know what I'm driving at. It's life's affordable luxuries, and it's the heartbeat of every home. It's simple. It's NASCO. bring home happiness.
You're still watching Opposing Views right here on MX24 TV. My name is Kwabena Chenche Heneboating. I have a woman today, a panel filled with fantastic women, very, very powerful women, and we've been discussing a lot of issues relating to affirmative action and why there are so few women in such a critical space as the political space. Let me take some comments from Fozia on this. Fozia, you've heard a lot so far. You've heard justifications, you've heard reasons, you've heard potential solutions. Again, let me say, we may have to get a part 2 of this thing, which we'll agree on subsequently. But from all you have heard and seen so far, how far are we from finding a solution to the problem?
I won't say we are far. We've done a lot over the past years, and so we are inching closer to getting the solution. But that still has to do with the political will to pass some of these policies and strategies. And
so you maintain it's about political will?
Yes, about political will. And I mean, just to go back to what the dynamism part and the activism part, the most powerful man in Ghana right now is the president. It just has to take his, instruction that let's get the affirmative action bill passed in the next 2 months, and that will be done. No one will oppose that. So I think the political will is very important, and it's also important that the society and people who wills power acknowledge the efforts of women group and women activism, and not to assume that women are, which you were saying earlier on, that women are their own enemies, kind of. It doesn't work for us because there are a whole lot of things that women are pushing to get more women participate in conversations and discussions around development in the country. And we need to keep engaging more women and not to assume that we will not appear. Okay.
Hajia Sajida Shiraz, you're also with us. The same question to you. What do you see to be the way forward? And do you think we are anywhere close to finding a solution to this problem?
I don't know about close, but I know there's headway, because if you look at the global trajectory, you are seeing more women in leadership spaces. In the US, for instance, you have Kamala Harris as a vice presidential candidate. Even in our, let's just take Ghana, we have at least Professor Nana Adjman as.
We do have Bridget Jogbenuku, who is representing the Progressive People's Party also.
So we have Bridget, and then we have on the ballot now officially we have I think Ikea Donkotu is represented. But then that is still 3 out of 12 women. So that I don't know if it is enough. And I would by this measure like to perhaps appeal to Honorable Giti that we want women in spaces of leader, because there are so few women in politics. When women get into the corridor of power, they represent more than themselves. The parties to which they belong, they represent our voices. That is for us to play nice.
We'll hear her concluding remarks pretty soon. But Dr.
Sibiaba, our duty to represent the collective.
Dr. Sibiaba, if you are with us, so your colleague Sajida mentions a number of things, and she actually gives us an example. Say on the ballot paper we have 2 women represented there. The question now I'm asking, based on a few things I've seen. So for one of the research documents I read, it was suggested that people feel women are not as competent as men, for which reason they would rather go for men and not women. Now, speaking of competence and speaking of the way forward, do you think there's progress? How can we deal with this issue in the short term?
Question. It's important for us to think about this in multiple ways. Yes, there's some progress, and I agree completely with Hajia in terms of some of the progress that has been made, but there's still a lot to be done, and on multiple fronts. On the one front, we need people who are in powerful positions of power to push this agenda, to, as it were, actually open the door. And let's see if people won't walk into the door, because there are so many people actually pounding behind that door that maybe if we opened it, we would get a lot of people in. And in terms of competence, I think we all know that that is just part of the problem with the ways in which discourse constructs. And as you know, Hajia took us back to the period of when the public sphere was made specifically or created deliberately for men. We hear these kinds of things. And if you see the people who are on the ballot at the moment competing, I'm very sure that if we were to look for competence, we would probably find that they were more competent than their male counterparts. Not that we are necessarily looking at the competition of competence per se, but I think it's important for us to deconstruct these kinds of things when they come up. And they only come up when we are talking about women or minority people who are trying to push open the doors. And I'd just like to, because we're talking about these things, it's important for us to see that there are revolutions in the making around us, right? Not just in terms of women wanting to get into these positions or talking about them, but we are also seeing increasingly that the youth on our continent are saying that enough is enough with this kind of mediocrity in our leadership, generally speaking, across the continent, where it looks like the political ruling class really does not take the issues of the masses seriously. And I think that this is one of the issues of the masses, and we have to begin to listen. So there's a lot to be done in terms of education, people in the media, you know, highlighting and making sure that the people who are fighting for affirmative action do this. And again, I'm really glad that we are talking about this as a democracy. We can't continue to call ourselves a democracy if we are deliberately excluding a majority of our population. So yes, there's some progress that has been done, and I'm really glad that we are having these conversations, but there's still a lot that needs to be done.
Let me take your concluding remarks here.
Well, let me be practical here, and then because we want solutions. And it is, as it is, we will, until the affirmative action bill is passed, we will rather appeal to the president that there should be a special budget line for the Ministry of Gender and Children and Social Protection.
Right.
So
Thank you.
That will strengthen.
That's fine.
The women's front.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Gifty Klenam Kekeli is a former member of parliament for Lower West Akim. I also had in studio Fozia Tua Al Hassan, Programs Associate with the Media Foundation for West Africa. Also Hajia Sajida Shiraz, who is the founder for Women's Action Network for Change, as well as Dr. Sylvia Bauer, an Associate Professor of Sociology with York University. Ladies, thank you so much for your time today on the show. We'll definitely have to bring this conversation back. My name is Kwabena Chencheni Boateng. This has been Opposing Views on MX24. Thank you for watching.